This diagram shows the ancient patriarchal power structure of the family of Isaac. Notice this single, glowing central node at the top. In this era, the patriarch operated as the sole administrator of his family's wealth, territory, and entire future lineage. The transfer of this absolute power was executed through a mechanism called the blessing. It was a legally binding, irreversible oral contract designed exclusively for the system's designated heir, the firstborn son, Esau. But this centralized system had a critical physical vulnerability. Isaac's extreme old age had compromised his failing vision, taking his primary biometric verification offline. Without secure channels, instructions for the final power transfer were broadcast openly. Isaac's wife, Rebecca, overheard her husband telling Esau to hunt for venison, so his soul could bless him before he died. Rebecca immediately orchestrated a zero-day exploit. A zero-day exploit is an attack that takes advantage of a security vulnerability the exact moment it becomes known to the attacker. She used her younger son, Jacob, as the payload to infiltrate Isaac's tent and steal the inheritance while the primary visual defense was down. Relying on a single failing security node leaves any centralized authority exposed. If an attacker can bypass that one compromised sensor, they can take over the entire network. Jacob initiated the breach by entering the patriarch's tent carrying a spoofed payload. He presented a dish of domestic goat meat, carefully engineered by Rebecca to mimic the exact savory profile of Esau's wild venison. Curious, the system immediately flagged a logic anomaly. Hunting wild game takes time, yet Jacob had returned almost instantly. Isaac asked, "How is it that thou hast found it so quickly, my son?" To clear the error, Jacob deployed a piece of social engineering. Social engineering is the psychological manipulation of people into performing actions or divulging confidential information. Jacob claimed that the Lord thy God brought it to me, using divine intervention as a psychological bypass to shut down Isaac's logical firewall. Still suspicious, the administrator noted a mismatch in the incoming audio feed. Jacob's voice didn't match the expected acoustic profile of the firstborn, prompting Isaac to initiate a secondary authentication protocol. Before an attacker can execute a physical breach, they have to manipulate the human element. Answering a logical discrepancy with a psychological diversion forces the target to second-guess their own alerts. To resolve the conflicting data, Isaac commanded his son to come near to test his tactile biometrics, explicitly checking to feel whether he was his very son Esau or not. This split-screen graphic maps the tactile texture of a goatskin on the left against human hair on the right. Rebecca had covered Jacob's hands and neck with these skins to perfectly mimic the heavy body hair of his older brother, generating a 100% match in Isaac's comparative sensor data. Isaac makes a fatal processing error here. He consciously registers the audio anomaly, stating, "The voice is Jacob's voice," but he allows the false tactile data, the hands of Esau, to override the warning. The final security check relied on a proximity token. Isaac asked his son to lean in for a kiss, allowing him to inhale the distinct scent of the field from Esau's borrowed clothes. With all sensory alerts cleared or bypassed, Isaac executed the irreversible command. He transferred the dew of heaven, the fatness of the earth, and total lordship over all brethren directly to Jacob. By feeding the administrator overlapping, spoofed physical data points, an attacker can trick a failing authentication system into authorizing a catastrophic transfer of power. The exploit was completed just moments before the legitimate user returned. Esau arrived with his own venison, and Isaac trembled violently as he realized his entire authentication system had been compromised. This diagram shows an immutable ledger. A digital block slides into a permanent chain slot, locking firmly into place. Being permanent, Isaac couldn't refund the stolen token. He instead generated a smaller, secondary block from his remaining resources. Esau's compromised destiny was bleak. Isaac decreed that he would be sustained only by the sword, and bound by a strict mandate of servitude to his younger brother. Immutable systems are highly secure against external retroactive tampering, but if the initial authorization process is compromised, that exact same permanence becomes incredibly destructive to the legitimate user. The immediate result of the hack was the total collapse of the family network. Realizing his future had been stolen, Esau vowed lethal revenge against Jacob the moment their father's mourning period began. To save her payload, Rebecca executed one final administrative action. She forced Jacob to flee the environment entirely, sending him to live with her brother in Haran to avoid the physical fallout. The theft of a personal identity and the execution of a fraudulent, irreversible power transfer are often treated as modern digital anxieties, but the mechanics of this exploit show they are foundational human vulnerabilities, hard-coded into our oldest surviving narratives.